And then he squirted me with water. So I just went up and I was like, in my mind, I was like, listen, I really want to bash him, but he's my mate. I don't want to get red carded. What's the best thing I could do? So I just gave him the old patented Vulcan death grip, and just choked him a bit. My dad taught me a very valuable lesson. You can lie to everyone else, but you can't lie to yourself. I'd never met anyone in 20 years that had ADHD, never heard of it, never spoke about it. Now, every fuck you bump into who's a little bit late, a little bit confused, a little bit scatty, who's got ADHD, diagnosed off the back of TikTok. Welcome to the Old Paratrooper podcast. I'm James Haskell, former international rugby player turned DJ, music producer, podcaster and best-selling author.
Welcome, James. Thank you very much for taking time to come on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No dramas at all. What I like to do with all the podcasts is I like to start at the beginning. Whereabouts you're from, where you grew up, and what led you down the path, ultimately, the road that you took. Yeah, so over to you. Whereabouts you from?
So I was born in Windsor. I basically lived around the Berkshire area for probably about 12 years. 20 years in total around that area, but in the first part where I lived. I didn't ever want to be a rugby player. I went to some schools that played rugby quite competitively, and I sort of got thrown into that mix. And I essentially became addicted to not necessarily rugby, but the linear pathway of professional sport, which is, you know, if you put the work in, you get the reward. If you play well, you get more of a reward, and it's very simple and transactional. And I basically ended up being a professional athlete for kind of near on 20 seasons, from the age of sort of 16 to 35. Then I retired. And I now DJ and make music. I've got a production company. I've got a gin and tequila business. I'm a dad. I'm basically, I travel around the world doing lots of exciting stuff. I'm divorced. That's about all you need to know, really.
I can relate to the divorce thing, definitely. Yeah, I think most of us are men of a certain age, we end up with one of them.
Yeah.
Comes with a package.
Yeah.
So the rugby career, you say you weren't destined to be a rugby player, but you kind of fell into it. Was that through the schooling system and stuff like that?
Yeah. So my dad never played sport. I basically went to a school called Wellington College. I played rugby at prep school, a place called Papwick. Went to Wellington, kind of got there. Everyone was sort of wearing rugby shirts. I mean, a lot of my childhood was spent kind of outside, kind of, you know, running around building bases. I was obsessed with being in the army. I wanted to be in the special forces. That's kind of what I wanted to do. And I also loved driving diggers. That was another thing that I got involved. So my dad basically said the amount of money he kind of spent or wasted on my education, I wasn't able to be a digger driver because he'd spent a fortune. He needed some slightly higher achievement, even though they're very skillful people. And the sort of the army thing or the SAS thing kind of fell by the wayside when I got into sport, but I essentially started playing rugby with a real focus about 14, 15. I trialled for England under 16s, didn't get in because I didn't play particularly well, but I got all the way to final trial, didn't put the extra work in that was required of me. And so my dad said to me, look, at the end of it, you can either acknowledge you didn't put the work in, didn't play particularly well, that your tackling's not very good, you're a bit of a pussy, and you need to go away and work on that, and I'll help you do that. I've got a friend who's of the family who's a personal trainer, or you can just play rugby for a bit of fun and not worry about it. So I went away, and I sort of looked inside myself, realised what my dad was saying was true, so I said, yeah, I'll give it a go. And I basically just got on this hamster wheel of kind of training, working and sacrificing. And I learned lessons that around that age, 14, 15, it takes adults 40 years to learn, and some of them still don't learn. And I basically came back essentially 2 years later, captaining under 18s, got on the radar. I was supporting WASP quite heavily at the time, so I was kind of going to start watching sport. I hadn't really watched sport as a kid. You know, we only had 4 channels on the TV really until later on. There was no 24-hour news. There was no social media. So in terms of access to heroes, the only time you ever got that was going to WASP games, you could sign autographs, and it was very accessible, unlike football. You know, football players you wouldn't get anywhere near, but you'd have rugby players in the bars talking to people. You got to meet your heroes. You know, we pitch invaded a few times, and sort of that coincided with my desire to be better. I wanted to play rugby. I started having some heroes. The pathway started merging, and I deferred my university entry at 18 to give it a go. I got offered a contract, and then suddenly I was 35 and retiring, really.
God, yeah. Well, it's obviously it didn't come as a natural thing to you. You really had to work at it, didn't you?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, listen, I had talents for rugby, but it was something I had to work at, and my work ethic, I truly believe was what got me through everything. It's what's getting me through everything now, really, in terms of my attitude. My dad taught me a very valuable lesson. You can lie to everyone else, but you can't lie to yourself. And I would always just carry that with me. It is a very good lesson to go, look, you know, if you're complaining about where your life is financially, physically, medically, whatever it might be, relationship wise, if the answer to any of the questions is, could you be doing more? Could you be getting better? Could you ask for help? Could you be upskilling yourself? Could you be dealing with your mental health? Could you be working on it? And the answer to any of those questions is yes, then you've got no fucking right to moan. You have to go away and find a plan and do it and sort it. And I learned that very quickly. And that kind of was the difference between me and other people who probably had a bit more natural talent. I think I also had a real desire of being pretty unfulfilled in terms of what I was doing. So that really drove me to want to get better. So I'd finish games, and even if I got man of the match, I'd want to do more. I'd want to work on the bits I didn't get right. I was never that satisfied, which when you retire, you then have to address that, because otherwise, you know, it's a recipe. So what is your recipe for success while you're doing something is fine, but it can also be your undoing later on in life if you don't address it. I imagine it's the same thing with people in the armed forces. You know, have a career, you have a set of skills, you have something driven that's bigger than you, and then you retire and you don't. A civilian life is pretty weird, pretty soft, and you don't obviously make that transition. So it's something I had to learn. But I started taking care of my mental health when I was 17 till now. You know, I still get therapy now to help improve. You know, there was no reason. I mean, I got diagnosed when I was 8-9 years old when I was with ADHD. I went to a proper clinical psychologist. She diagnosed me. I diagnosed with ADD. They put me on Ritalin till I was 16, and then Ritalin's a performance enhancing drug, so you couldn't take it. So I stopped taking it. Never took it again. I'd never met anyone in 20 years that had ADHD. Never heard of it. Never spoke about it. Now, every fuck you bump into who's a little bit late, a little bit confused, a little bit scatty, who's got ADHD, diagnosed off the back of TikTok. And so it, you know, I never talked about it because it was immaterial. You know, mental health diagnosis is the first step. Unless you're going to do something about it, work about it, you're just hanging on to it as a crutch. And that for me is pointless. You know, if I meet people all the time, go, oh, I'm depressed. They go, okay, what are you doing about it? Oh, nothing. Well, why are you fucking telling me then? You know, I've got ADHD. Okay, what are you doing about it? How are you managing it? What put in place? How does it manifest itself? What do you do? Oh, nothing. I'm just a bit late, so I'm going to tell it it's ADHD. So I kind of have a slightly different view on it, and because I think we're talking about mental health more than ever, but it's still the biggest killer of men under 40. So nothing's fucking changed, really. We're talking about it more, but we're not matching it with action. And all the things that lead to men's suicide, we're not really addressing, which is partnership, breakdown of relationships, money on the table, and access to kids. So I love it, and I think it's great, but I think a lot of people walk around, you know, when we were younger, you wouldn't put your hand up and go, hi, I'm James Haskell, I've got ADHD, or I'm neurospicy. We now lead with that, and it's often done as a reason to excuse you or to as be a crutch, and that is not what it's about. It's meant to be, look, you know, we're talking about it, perfect. What you do action wise, and then that's the big gap, and there isn't a big gap, and it's you know, it's nice to be reassuring if you've got a kid that's like fucking bouncing off the walls. It's great to get a diagnosis, but again, like, just because you know that's what they're there, what are you doing to manage it? What behaviours, what skill sets, what therapy, what modalities, what are you doing? And so for me, that's a really important element of all of it. And I became sort of an unofficial spokesman kind of for ADHD. And I think people look to me to kind of go, oh yeah, you know, it's this, it's hard, it's that. It's like, well, I've managed it. So it's not something that ever impacts my life. I see it as a superpower. I can do multiple things at once. Yeah, of course your brain works really quickly, and you speak really fast, and you know you have some destructive personality bits, and stuff and you don't, you're not necessarily organized. But I went, well, I'm not organized, so how do I become organized, and what do I do to do that? And in later life, it was getting a virtual PA and managing it through that way, and knowing what you're good at and what you're not good at, and the self-awareness to go, actually, I've got stuff that I can't do. So if I can't do it, who can help me do it? How can I learn to do it? Who's doing what I want to do better than me? And then going out and asking them, and also being prepared to hear, actually, you're not doing this right, you're not doing that right. But I think sport, in the same token, saved me, because I need routine. I need routine. I need structure, and that's what you lose, when you retire. Because I was basically from boarding school to 8 till 18, which is basically like being without the risk of death, injury, and everything else like that, but like the armed forces in a way, because you're institutionalized.
Yeah.
Then you go into sport. You're institutionalized again, really, and then you come into the real world, and then you have to go, right, well, what was keeping me organized, successful? That was routine, it was structure, it was planning, it was self-awareness, and also it was the ability to hear feedback that you maybe don't want to hear. And so those are kind of my secrets, really.
Yeah, there's a few things you said there that really resonate with me. Like, if you're not happy with any part of your life, then you take steps to fix it. That's one of the
Yeah.
rules that I live by. Whether it's a relationship, whether it's your career, you can't sit there and mope about it and go, well, it's just shit. Do something
No.
about it, change it.
Yeah, and I think, I do think, look, and again, the problem with social media is it's actually made the world further apart than it's brought closer, because people will listen to this or see this clip and go, like, contextually, you wouldn't understand. You come from a privileged background. You're not a single mother. You're not working 3 jobs. It's easy to say to fix stuff. The point is, the principles are, it's not easy, because it's never easy to do anything. But it's even if you were in that dire situation, and there's some incremental bits that you could try to find, even if it was just 2% better today than you were yesterday, maybe in terms of some organization, or looking at how you structure your bills, or look at just some bit of moment, even how you look after yourself. If I was in that stressful situation, or just fucking fight, pedaling like fuck, trying to put fun on the table, it's trying to go, look, how can I look after myself better in that situation, even if you're being super selfless for your kids. And so I think I'm never saying that my way is the easy way. And a lot of people just turn around and say, oh, look, if there's no one coming to save you, you have to do you. The honest answer is, everyone's situations are very different. Everyone has very different issues and things that are affecting them. There are principles that you can adhere to, but it's not easy. For some people, it'll be easier than others. And also, there's a simple truth that I don't think people want to admit, is that some people are not prepared to be uncomfortable, not prepared to work hard, not prepared to hear feedback, not prepared to change, not prepared to sacrifice, not prepared to upskill themselves. And they honestly don't have the will and determination. And that is why we have a diversity of skills, intelligence, ability, success, because we're not all born equal because of the way we are. Some people's bodies don't work from birth. Some people's do. Some people fail. Some people, cancers can take you away. Like, it's a completely unfair playing field. And whoever, I don't believe in God, but whoever's fucking created all this stuff, it's not fair. Yet we're always trying to make things fair and equal. And mental health and determination, ability to change and to upskill yourself and to do so is equally more difficult. And we've all got friends that whenever we speak to them, it's always someone else's problem. It's the government's problem. It's immigration's problem. It's fucking someone else's problem, whatever it is. And then we've got the other people that, come what may, they turn up, they work, they do things. And then you've got the people who come from absolutely nothing, fight, work, fail, lose money, lose friends, do whatever they can do, and make a success. And there's no secret recipe, but there are some decent pillars that you can look at to be successful, and particularly to help with your mental health, I think.
No, I like that. I like what you say, because again, you do create your own luck, and there are multiple success stories out there of people that were born dealt a shit hand, and then they've taken steps. It's not always that cut and dried. I agree with what you're saying there. All sorts of things come into play, illnesses and that kind of stuff. But I think I use myself a little bit as an example. No qualifications. I've done all right, but I've always had to work. Everything's come at failures, and then trying to rebuild, and then you get to where. I think it boils down again to your kind of mindset and how driven you are as an individual. Do you want it or do you not? That's a big part of it. ADHD touched on there. Obviously, I'm in agreement with you. people use it. They want to use it as an excuse. I wouldn't be anywhere or done anything that I've done in my life without having ADHD. And that's the God's honest truth. I believe true in what you say. It's a superpower. You get a lot of criticism for saying that. But when you focus on something with ADHD, you're all in. You make it work, don't you?
Yeah. And look, again, neurodiversity affects people in completely different ways. There's no linear way that someone's ADHD affects somebody else. You can only ever reflect on yourself. Like, I was obviously, our parents obviously had a lot of frustrations with me, because I couldn't, I was, it was always the thing. I was reasonably intelligent. I couldn't necessarily concentrate in class. I was disruptive. I was big. I was clumsy. I was, dyslexic as well. My mum was told I was never going to read and write and all this kind of stuff. And I think they just tried their very best to fix me. And so there's loads of different things that happened. And then, but I don't recall being, I wasn't like a nightmare kid, smashed the whole place up, psycho kind of, like I wasn't that kind of kid, or really disruptive, or like people you see on Super Nanny. So I can't remember, because I was 8 or 9, exactly how I manifested my ADHD, but I imagine it was not concentrating, pretty bit scatty, not really remembering to do things, kind of no filter really, talk very fast, disorganized, but I went on to Ritalin, and
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really remember much about it, other than it just made me really focused, and I could deep dive into work. It didn't affect my mood. I don't on a conscious level remember much difference from it, but I do remember it being able to help me sit down, focus. And it then taught me to hyper focus, really, where I was be able to outwork for hours, and almost hours, and forget to get up and eat and do stuff, and like 5 or 6 hours would go past, So, and that sort of stayed with me as a byproduct of that, where I'm easy to commit. It's a lot harder now, actually, because of social media and the way we digest content, to ever fucking sit still and watch anything without picking your phone up. That things like phones and distraction bits do not help with ADHD. And also with where I sit and work, I wake up in the morning and go, right, if I try to, because I make music, DJ, podcast, after to speak, comedy, fucking gin, do everything, right? Content creation. If you try to do all those bits at the same time, you fucking just go off on a tangent, and suddenly you're like lost yourself. So I go, right, I'll bracket off. I'll do an hour just doing emails. Don't go look at my WhatsApps. Don't do anything. So I compartmentalize. Right, do that. Then the next minute I do my WhatsApps. Then I do my social media, and I bracket off so I don't lose myself down a rabbit hole. So I've learned behaviors that work really well for me, and I've also learned things like habit stacking, which is doing a couple of things at the same time. So even like brushing your teeth in the shower. I always floss in the car. If I go out for training, I used to pack the night before with a bag. I'd listen to an audio book while I'm cooking breakfast. So you just kind of do those things. And if I know that if I don't have like my supplements out, I'm not going to get them out the cupboard. I need them out so I can do it. So there's little things, cheats that you kind of learn. And I also spent a lot of time trying to work out how I learned. Because people don't really. You ask other people to sort of speak to you in the right way, but if you don't look at how you learn in terms of I'm visual, and I have to walk through it. You can't just talk to me at it. So I need to do it, and then I probably just need to talk it back to you. So, if we're talking to rugby coaches and business people and school teachers, you have to kind of find that how you learn, and then you can ask other people to help you, really.
Yeah, you do. It's about research. You find out. And I think the key, what you've said there as well, once you understand how your own brain works with ADHD and stuff like that, it's a game changer. And same, I relate exactly to what you're saying there. Learning fire service, sat there in lessons. No, take me out in the drill yard, show me how to do a particular thing. It went in, but it was just like being in a different language, being taught in a classroom. Throughout my whole school career and throughout the military, I was just sitting, and I'd look around, I'm probably the same as you, look around at people getting what's being told and writing down, and you sat there going, am I fucking stupid or what? Because I'm not digesting it, but very visual. And I think a lot of people, would you agree, a lot of ADHD people probably learn that way?
Yeah, I think, look, for visual, so I would watch how someone did something, and then I'd have to walk through it. and then maybe I could, and if I wrote it down, it'd stay in. So I had 3 different ways of doing it, and that's how I did it. Like if I want to learn something, I type it out, write it out. One of the best things I ever did was on a school holiday, I got my mum to sign me up to a touch typing course at a local council thing. I just did that every day, learned to touch type. So it makes writing stuff very easy. Being on computer, spell checking and stuff. I'm not great at spelling, but that ability to be able to do that. I wrote these books. I've written 8 books, and I wrote myself. I worked with some ghostwriter to help structure stuff, but in terms of writing them, I love writing. And my mum was told I was never going to read or write properly. So I think I was lucky because my mum could afford to try to get extracurricular teachers and bits and pieces to try to help me, but I had to spend some time learning how I want to be spoken to and understood.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So with the rugby, with your playing career, a couple of questions for you before we can launch into your sort of playing career. But would you say, and don't shoot the messenger because these have been sent me, would you say, you've probably been asked this numerous of times, but do you think there's a class problem within rugby?
Well, do you know what? Again, so rugby is haunted by tradition and old beliefs, and the older beliefs extend to: is it a classist game? The other belief that they'd say is that certain positions play a certain way and look a certain way, and that certain teams can't beat certain other teams, and it's like rugby fans haven't progressed in anything, because the honest answer is, under Eddie Jones, there was more comprehensive school players on the field than there was public school boys. But people don't talk about that. There's,
Okay.
the problem is, the reason it's seen as a class is that as non-public schools don't play it. They don't play the sport. They're not interested. It's not, the thing is, with football is the national sport. It is the working man sport, really, because it is easily accessible. It is something that is traditionally played in different schools and different, but it isn't played in, and rugby wasn't played in comprehensives, and so that's a challenging factor. But there's club rugby all around the country that has no class to it. So I think that, yeah, traditionally the top public schools played rugby. So in the past it was seen, I think, as that way. But I actually think that's diminishing. The only problem is with the issue around concussion, a lot of people aren't playing it again, and so it's a very hard one. But I mean, I sort of have always played in teams with people from really diverse backgrounds. Yeah, obviously white middle class people would probably fill most of the spots, but actually I think that's slowly changing. But unfortunately, because of other issues, and it always comes down to finances and how easy it is. You can play football with 2 jumpers and a goalpost, or 2 jumpers and a goalpost in a football. Rugby, you need posts, pitches, more numbers. It's a much more complicated game. Football's most complicated rule that is traditionally not misunderstood by everyone is the offside rule. That would be the easiest rule in rugby, and so that's the issue, as opposed to it being classed a thing. But I think traditionally it was like that, but it's certainly not anymore.
Yeah, the budget thing, private schools probably have a better budget, employ better coaches, perhaps. I know my lad's at school now. My lad's a prime example. He's 15. He's 6 foot tall. He's about 14 and a half stone. He's dead quick.
Yeah.
But they don't teach rugby at his secondary school, and it's just not something now and I'm like, you need to go and play rugby at a club, and then obviously you got to pay for that.
I just think as well as the popularity, rugby is a 3rd-tier sport in this country. It's not, people who like rugby love rugby and they think it's the be all and the end all. If you walk down the street, I don't think you could name one player. Well, most people couldn't name one player that plays in the England squad. People could probably name maybe Joe Marler. They could probably name me from I'm a Celebrity. They can definitely name Johnny Wilkinson. They could name a few people, but they wouldn't be able to name many current players, because it doesn't market itself particularly well. It's getting better, but it doesn't market particularly so well. It's not shown on free-to-air TV that often. A lot of the Premiership bits are on weird fucking charge programs you have to subscribe to. So that's why it's got nothing to do with who can afford to play it. Is there a demand for it? No. Is it a national sport? Not really. But do people want to? Is it easy to play? No. Is it full contact? Yes. Do people want to? Is it a winter sport? Yes. Bizarrely, do people want to fucking get kicked in the head in the pissing rain? No. Is it much nicer to play football? Yes. Is there much more money and heroes in football? Yes. So it by the byproduct, it ends up becoming an exclusive sport because tradition dictates public schools would play that. That's where they play it. But, you know, comprehensive, it's so much more difficult to play and to do. There's different forms you could do: touch, mixed touch. I think all those things are really good. But in terms to play full contact rugby, the safety, the insurance, the thing, that's why. It's got nothing to do with the fact that, that it's public school. It's got to do with all those reasons and the demand. How many kids want to go out in the piss and rain and get smashed up? Not many. How many want to fucking pretend they're Eric Haaland scoring volleys and doing whatever? I'd say a lot of them.
Yeah, it is. I get you. Like, football's everywhere, innit? But the thing that makes me laugh about it is, and this will get a bit of controversy, but I don't see footballers like really positive role models for the kids. A lot. You've seen some of the stories about footballers and how they come across as like spoiled and stuff like that. Whereas rugby is a gentleman's sport. You can have a set two on the field, you can have a bit of a punch up, and then you go and have a few beers with them after, and it's like a gentlemanly thing. So I think that would be more appealing than the other side of it, but it's not, is it?
Yeah, but because I don't think the average person thinks like that, really. I think they see the glitz and the glamour. I think that, the problem with football is that when you've got players drastically earning more than the coaches and anyone else, and are commodities in their own right, and who can have a profound effect on a game, that makes a big difference. Like in rugby, the best player in the world is still relying on 14 other players around him and can do some incredible solo moments, but, and can have an effect, but does not have the same effect like a Ronaldo, a Messi, a Hart, and, guys that can really transform and add. And when they're getting paid, hundreds of millions, and they can, and the coach tells them to wind their neck in and stop diving, it just goes to his agent and goes, fucking, either get the coach sacked or I'm gone. And that doesn't happen in rugby because the money isn't the same, the entitlement isn't the same, because it's not a national sport. And I think, I remember talking to Ian Wright about this in the jungle. They're not really competing, football and rugby, in any way, really. I think the mentality of kind of respecting the referee and the values are very important. But I think societies in general, a lot of those things are eroding. Chivalry's being eroded, being a strong man's being eroded, politeness and manners is being eroded. When you've got politicians saying whatever they want to other people, like, calling of journalists Miss Piggy and stuff like that. Once you see people in power completely eroding the way that you should act, that filters down to everyone. So, and when you've got parents on the sideline calling the referee a CUNT at an under-10s football match, it education and life, it's just completely different sphere. So you think the rugby players are good role models. I mean, listen, some are, some aren't, some are flawed, some are great. I think the general rules of respecting people, politeness, be able to kick the fuck out of each other, not being dramatic, but then not being drama queens and diving is because we self-police it. But even then, it's becoming more difficult because the younger players coming in, and I don't have a lot of involvement, but you can see, they want more now, and they want that stuff now. And I wanted more when I was a player, but the generation much more precious. They're not necessarily like told instant feedback. They don't like honesty, really. They don't like their feelings being hurt, because they're taught that we're all special, we're all unique, and we should all be going at the pace of the slowest person, and that that kind of tougher stuff is not correct. You've got parents now not disciplining. You've got them getting down on the kid's level and trying to reason with the kid. Like, fundamentally, a lot of that stuff doesn't work. Some of it does, but it's very kid dependent. If I've got a 3-year-old, discipline is really important for me. I'll obviously explain decisions to her, but I'm not asking a 3-year-old's opinion. I'm not interested whether she fucking, she doesn't understand why she should have chocolate. She can't watch Bluey. I know better because I'm the adult. We all know. I mean, then when we get to being an adult, you go, maybe we should listen to our parents. I'm not reasoning with a 3-year-old. I'm going to put a discipline. And because of that, she comes in, she takes her shoes off, she hangs her coat up, she says, please, she says, thank you. She helps clear the plate. She's a good girl. She listens. And that's it. And you just put boundaries. Kids need boundaries. I'm not, and I think, unfortunately, society is losing a lot of those boundaries and discipline because we are the vocal minority who want everything desensitized and soft and easy, and we should never have a bad feeling. We should never watch something we don't like. We should never hear any bad words. It's bollocks. The whole point of life is you have a raft of human emotions, which is sadness, negativity, shame, whatever. You're meant to feel them, otherwise you're not living. You know, you're meant to turn on the news, see something about war or suicide, and be like, "Fuck, that's awful." You're not meant to go, "Oh, I'm going to complain because they put that on there." If you go to a library, there'll be a book in there that you'll read that'll offend you. Good. It's fucking meant to be, because someone out there will like that book. Some people won't, but you're meant to feel those things. And I think with kids, it's another thing. They're just doing them a bit of a disservice. And I think there's lots of things that have improved. Like, you don't want your kids to be bullied. I understand that, but you know, every interaction is a learning thing. And you know, if you are an entitled little shit who's rude, who's got no manners, you know, you see it all the time. Like, you know, kids. You know, you go on trains and bits and where people behave, they've got no father figures, got no role models, and they act like fuckheads. And, you know, if someone shouts at them or tells them to fuck off, or, you know, or if they started and they get filled in, you know, I'm not advocating violence, but I'm just saying that, you know, you fuck around, find out. That's what happens. You know, I would be respectful of everyone I meet. I'd be polite. And that's what's important. That's how I was distilled into me. You know, I would never dare do stuff that some of these people are doing. And so I want to make sure I bring my daughter up in the right way. Now, listen, you know, I could be trying to be the best dad in the world, and she could be a fucking serial killer. Who knows? Like, it's, you know, or I could be the worst parent. She could win a Nobel Prize. I don't know. You just, there's no rule book to doing it, but I think certain types of discipline are really important. Like, I would never physically touch her ever, because I don't think that works. But I think being direct, putting boundaries and saying, you know, this is what's going on. And if you say, you know, you can't watch that, you can't do that, I then don't fold up 10 minutes later and say you can watch it. I'll be like, look, you can't I've told you, don't do that. Right, let's go and do something else. But you can't have what you wanted first time around, because otherwise it just teaches you that if you moan and whine enough, someone will give in and give you what you want.
Yeah, I think that it's the fundamentals. It's the fundamentals of manners and politeness that's instilled from a young age. And I get you. They are massively important. And like you say, they're not there anymore because people are scared to be disciplined, because we've created this narrative now that it's okay to be offended at everything you see. And I agree with a lot of stuff you've said there, James, to be completely honest. And sadly, I think we've seen the biggest shift in the last 10 years in any generation of the way the world's gone. I think this is unprecedented now, that the way that the world is.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we pull it back.
Well, I just think in terms of, I was talking to someone this morning on the phone, and it's like, you know, you've seen that very sad, like, meningitis outbreak that's happened. It's happened in Kent. You've got, you know, that's probably going to be a thing. You've got COVID. We've got dictators in the world. We've got bombing everyone. Society's eroded. We've got 400 genders. We've got problems with immigration. We've got politicians lying. We've got no leader. We've got just, the fucking world is mad. And most people, all they're trying to do is put food on the table and worry about looking after their family. Yet, you know, media is no longer media. Media is about writing about what someone with no qualifications or reason tweeted. So you then build a story out of that. You know, everyone wants to be offended. Everyone wants to cancel everyone, because, you know, there's lots of things that did go wrong. You know, there's obviously misogyny was an issue. Obviously, there was things that where, you know, you needed to rewrite the balance. But we've gone so far the other way that now no one isn't really sure. But also, then I also think that most people don't give a shit, and most people don't care. It's just it's the media narrative is very much driven by clickbait and getting selling papers. They're not really interested in who they're talking about. It's just trying to blow it up, and they've empowered people who had the smallest voice and the maddest views, and all the extremism on the outside. It's now, the world has become way more extreme. There's no, you know, there's now further lefts and further rights than ever before. I mean, honestly, I think if you think about it, it's stressful. That's why, I'll be honest with you, I just wake up every day and go, like, what is it I can do to be the best version of myself, to be a good dad, to work on, I worry about myself. I've never gone online, criticized anyone. I don't, even when I criticize rugby performances, I don't do it in a personal manner. I get abused for not being tough enough on people. It's not my problem. I've got enough faults and enough things that I need to work on than spending my time going and trying, you know, stopping people work or stuff. If I turn on a program, I don't like it, I go, I don't like that, I put that down. Or I see something, go, oh, fuck, that was a bit close to the bone, and I move on. I don't it doesn't wake me up, doesn't keep me awake at night. But again, I'm not the demographic that's been perversely affected. But I saw there's Dave Chappelle did a very controversial but very informed thing. If you had a brain in your head, you could see it, called The Closer, and it was a stand-up comedy thing. And he's talking about a friend of his who was transgender, and kind of he's basically saying that when gay people came out as gay, he said it took them such a long time to be accepted, which is bizarre in itself, because sexuality is just fucking, it wouldn't even bother me. It doesn't bother me. I think I'm sad that people have to come out. I think because I never came out straight, so I don't understand why you have to do that. But then I think you then have the transgender narrative, but they're obviously quick succession into being much more mainstream. He makes a joke, obviously, the gay community must be looking at them going, fuck me, I wish we had their PR. But then he said that black people are still disenfranchised in comparison to all this kind of stuff. He's talking about a very informed thing, but his conclusion was that we're all just trying to navigate our journey through life, through death. We've all got different experiences, and some of us have been treated badly and hated upon. And if that's how you feel and you do that to another section of society, you're actually just perpetuating it. And if everyone just went, look, we're all just trying our best, you just do you, I'll do me, and let's just get on with it, and understand we're all just trying to navigate things, and what I experience is very different to you experience, and let's be okay. And if you've been hated on, do the better thing and do it in a more sensible way. And that for me was really profound. And they're still trying to cancel him for it, but
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It's like, and I find it really bizarre that in 2026 we still give a shit about people's sexualities, people's fucking what they identify. I base my kind of opinions on basically don't be a cunt. I've got it tattooed on my knuckles. It says there, don't be a cunt. It's quite simple. It's just don't be nice, get on with everyone. But hey ho, that's the world we live in right now. So on your playing career, I'm going to speed through it because obviously with 35 minutes, and I don't want to keep you too long. Your defining moments. I want to talk to you about, I bet you've been asked about a million times because it was a viral clip with the whole Joe Marler incident. How did that come about? Are you friends with Joe Marler now?
Yeah, I've always been friends with Joe. Now, it was my first game back after 5 weeks off with hand surgery, and I had my finger fused. So I came back, I hadn't played. The first breakdown I went into, Joe stamped on the inside of my hamstring, or trod on me, or whatever you want to call it. So he'd already fucked me off because, obviously having his hamstring stamped. And then he obviously then pulled my scrum cap off, right? And to be fair, I've been doing a bit of MMA stuff, and I've been jiu-jitsu for a while. So obviously if you watch the video, the way I fucking just took him straight down, got on top of him, I was just thought I'd handle it because I love Joe, and I don't want to give away a yellow card. So I was in control of what I was doing, but I was still fucked off. I was like, listen, I probably will, stamp my authority on him because I'm not a pushover, but I will try to do it in the most manageable way. And I got squirted with, I think Danny Cairden squirted with water, and then Joe hid in my scrum cap. And it sounds fucking childish, but if someone came up and pulled something out of your hand in real life, you just fill him in. Well, I would anyway. So, or try to. I'd probably get knocked out, but you know what I mean? So, and then he squirted me with water. So I just went up and I was like, in my mind, I was like, listen, I really want to bash him, but he's my mate. I don't want to get red carded. What's the best thing I could do? So I just gave him the old patented Vulcan death grip, and just choked him a bit. But it's become a thing where, but obviously as soon as I got yellow colours from the game, I just went up and hugged him. I was like, I love Joe. He's one of my most interesting characters I've ever met in terms of the sport. He was an incredible player, both scrummaging but carrying and tackling. And so, I really admired him for those things, and also his mental health journey. So I never took things ever personally. I would lose my head, but again, people said I sort of he won that round ultimately because he wound me up enough to get me yellow carded, and obviously it became a quote to that you can't squirt water at yourself, which people repeat ad nauseum to me, as well as send me those clips, as well as sending me the clip where I ran into the post. So it's one of those things, but I sort of always been mates with Joe. I love Joe. And the fact that I didn't do anything very untoward was because I liked him, and that was the fact,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think it was blown up out more proportion than perhaps what it was.
Well,
But
it wasn't even a thing. It was just
yeah,
it was no proportion to it. It was too fun. We hugged and thing and had a bit after. It's just the fact that people think that I'm a massive pussy because I can't because I got water squirted in my face and didn't like it, and because I said on the referees, Mike, you can't do that, and they played that back, and that's what became the viral clip, and also the fact that Joe Marler is considerably more popular than me. So I'm a bit. Well, he's very much like if you love Joe, you love Joe. If you don't, or you don't know about Joe, really, so people will love him. Whereas I divide opinion a lot more. I'm much more seen as controversial, or just you either like me or you don't like me. So whenever that clip goes viral, everyone always says, you'd Joe'd fill you in, Joe'd fill you in. I mean, I can honestly hand on heart tell you that I'd absolutely fold him up like a fucking travel map, but it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit in with the narrative. So I let him go. But again, I wouldn't. I wouldn't fight a mate, especially a teammate. We were getting into England camp, and I admire him as a bloke, and he's absolutely sound.
yeah, absolutely. It's a celebrity boxing match on the cards then, but that, what, you make some money out of that?
No, they've asked. Yeah, but the thing is that people keep saying that, and I said to him
Oh,
on a
is it true?
podcast, I
People
said to him,
keep saying that.
no, people said, but I'm not fucking fighting for charity. I'll fight for money. I'm not. Charity starts at home. I'm not going in to a ring to fight Joe Marler unless they're going to pay. And so, I said to him, "This is the money I want. If you want to do it, we'll do it. If you don't want to do it, don't do it." But it's one of those things I don't. He makes jokes because obviously every time we ever do anything, it's one of those funny things. I sort of because it's me getting shafted because of the me spraying water thing. He did a thing the other day with Danny Kerr when he said, I'm not very hard. This. Everyone says he'll fight me. He told Eddie Hearn he'd fight me. It's just one of those constant things. It's funny, and it's funnier not doing it than it is doing it. But if someone wants to pay me £250,000 at £500,000, I'll fucking get into the
Get
ring.
in the
But
ring for that.
I'm not fighting white collar fucking for charity. I don't have the time to train, and B, I'm not getting filled in because it's lose. You beat Joe, win. You get knocked out, you lose. The only people who wins charity. I'd rather win and then win, financially. You know what I mean?
No, I've got to put you on that, mate. And to
Yeah.
be fair, I boxed at heavyweight on the unlicensed scene for quite a
Oh
while,
yeah.
and the two toughest fights I've had in my 15 fight, like I say career, it wasn't a career, but were two rugby players, Mark the Beast Hilton from Wasps. Do you know Mark?
Yeah. I know the name. Yeah. Helps.
I
Yeah.
fought him at the motor point, and you guys are built differently. You just take I hit quite hard, but hitting a rugby player
Yeah.
in the head is like it's soul destroying because you just keep coming with a smile on your face, and it really. I beat him in the end. I beat both that I fought. I
Yeah.
knocked
Yeah.
Mark out in the third round, but Jesus Christ, he put it to me. So your playing career, defining moment for you. Sum up your defining moment, if there is one that you could think of.
I mean, look, making your England debut was a defining moment in terms of wanting to, giving you that kind of that moment where you reach that pinnacle at 21 and wanting to go, am I intimidated by this? Am I cowed by it? Do I want more of it? Does it, and for me, it just was like, wow, this is what I want more of. This is the reason I've sacrificed. I'm prepared to double down, do more, work harder to have that moment, So for me, that was a really big pivotal moment because it also sets your life in a different trajectory because then you get a taste of something you want more of. And then, I was lucky then to play from 2007 to 2018, really not missing an England game unless I was fit, banned, or unselected, but but not massively. So for me, that was a really important turning point.
Yeah, absolutely. It's bound to be representing your company and the country in whatever sport you do is going to be up there with one of the top ones. I would have think if you're a patriotic person. Um, Obviously, we could talk about your playing career until the cows come home, but there's much more to you than obviously just rugby with the stuff that you've gone on to. So I want to talk about your transition out of rugby into. So obviously we talk about ADHD and dopamine levels. Obviously there's
Yeah,
probably a path that you've taken in life that's pumped up your dopamine levels. That thrill of playing rugby was probably one of them,
yeah.
pushing your dopamine levels up. When you've come to the end and it's time to retire, was you lost for a period of time thinking, was it a struggle when you quit playing professional rugby?
Um, Yeah, I think so. Look, my whole identity was wrapped up in James Haskell, the athlete. I knew what I was about, what I was doing. I had always planned for what I was going to do outside of rugby, but unfortunately, none of it was vocational. It all relied on popularity, relied on me being in the right frame or able to do stuff. Do you know what I mean? So it kind of was a very difficult thing. And then because we went straight into COVID, I retired 2019 and went straight to 2 years of COVID. Most of my audience weren't there. And then suddenly you kind of go, and you're traveling a lot and you're kind of able to go out. You've got weekends for the first time and you go away from your routine. You're working every hour that God sends because you want the money and you think you've got to say yes to everything. And then you don't do your training. You don't get your routine right. And so you can feel that loss. But again, I had therapy, I did therapy through a lot of those stuff to try to address what was going on. So again, it never got dark, but it got frustrating and scary and stuff. Even it does now because, again, all my stuff is reliant really on me performing. And, if you get cancelled now, that's it.
Well, what was the kind of first thing you did after? Did you go straight into like TV presenting, or was you
Yeah,
doing music anyway?
I signed 3-fight deal for Bellator to fight MMA. And then
No way.
yeah, and I basically spent a year and a half doing that. Then 2 years doing that. And then halfway through I did I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, 2019. The last one in the jungle before COVID. Then I was trying to fight. I was training back, 35, training at London Shoot Fights. But they were training me like I was fucking 25. So I was getting hammered, which was big. And then 6 weeks before my first fight at Wembley, the COVID happened. And then we didn't do anything for a year and a half. And then I wrote an autobiography and DJing and started to earn much more than I'd earned from fighting, doing other stuff. My ex-wife didn't want me to do it anyway. We were talking about having a kid and she got pregnant and didn't want me to fight while I was doing that. And I had to have spinal surgery. So there was loads of stuff. I mean, I've had about four surgeries since I retired. So again, there was lots of things there, training and being back fighting all the time was tough, emotionally, physically. DJing, traveling, playing, partying. It was, and then probably going to Ibiza for the first time in terms of DJing and having a kid. It's been crazy. And I probably didn't get all of it right, if I'm honest with you, at times. And, I had to take some learning from it, but I did manage to, sort of get that routine back by doing the therapy and addressing stuff and seeing what was important, saying yes to the right stuff and understanding what was my motivation, what is it I enjoyed doing, what should I say no to, and just going from there.
Is the DJing still something now that's prominent, like really prominent with what you do?
Yeah, it's my biggest passion. It's what I want to do more of. I love speaking, I love performing. Everything I do is around performing and storytelling. So the podcast is storytelling, the DJ is storytelling with music, but you're the one in the vibe, controlling everyone's music, dance. Everyone's night. Music's very emotive. You use it as a tool to change mood or get yourself psyched up. You're then playing music to people that love it. You're getting that visceral reaction, you're getting the dopamine. So it's the perfect replacement for playing. You get the travel, you get the big crowds, you get the technologies. I'm a bit of a nerd. You get the kind of jeopardy. You get the failures, you get the good mixes, you get the shit nights where no one's turned up. All of that kind of ticks all those boxes really for me. But all the rest of the stuff I do is centered really around performing,
Is that the same as the podcasting? How do you find the podcasting? Because it's the podcasting world's a bit of a mental one. I think you've either got it or people engage with you or you've not. I see a lot of podcast hosts out there that can't help talk about themselves. They don't let the guests talk. Do you find it? How do you find that doing the podcast?
Well, so first of all, our podcast has become unbelievably successful, in terms of how big it is. It's consisting of the top 4% of earning podcasts out there in terms of UK stuff. So it has lots of sponsors, worked with some incredible people. It's been super important for me to change people's opinion of me and seeing a completely different light of what I'm like, because again, people judge a book by its cover. The amount of emails I get or messages going, I used to think you were a cunt, but now I've met you, you're not a cunt, or I see you on this, you used to think you were a prick. So in terms of that transformative effect of showing a different side, different level of intelligence, honesty, openness, and understanding of the game, it's been brilliant. I've got two new best mates out of it, Mike Till and Alex Payne. We've built a business, and it's kept me relevant in terms of rugby and stuff. So it's a very important element. I like doing podcasts. I loved it again because it's long format. You can't be edited. You're telling your story. You can be yourself. It isn't, you're going on Channel 4 and getting 1 minute, 1 minute to speak. So that makes a massive difference. And so I absolutely love it. I think, there's a difference between me being talent on it, so me being a kind of a star and me driving the narrative, or when I'm interviewing, and that's the difference. So I probably at the start took me a while to learn, but I can switch in between those modes quite quickly. Whether I'm the one that's meant to be leading the thing, like on this, or if I was you, I would switch into a different way. And I think from Alex Payne, who's the main presenter, he was the voice of rugby on Sky for a long period of time. He's one of the most consummate interviewers, professional guys I've ever met. Really slick. I just learned watching him, how he did it, what he did, how he thought. And it's been a really, it's been a sort of a revolutionary process in terms of some people we've done. We've been to Windsor Castle, interviewed the royal family, been to Japan, we've been to Australia. We've been to France with it. We've interviewed some of the biggest names of the game. We've had some wild adventures. We worked with like Continental Tires, Remy Martin, Amazon, Domino's, invested like most people, Land Rover. We've done loads of stuff for people. So it's been quite fun. And it's something that I'm very keen to keep doing and evolving,
No, absolutely, absolutely. Well, you've obviously got a niche for it. You're obviously good at it. It's popular. If it's in that top 4%, you're doing something right. That's my aim at some point, but obviously different kind of thing. But
but again, it's look, people say about podcast. People never tell authors don't write another book. Yeah, everyone says, "Oh, we don't need another podcast." Yeah, you do. If you find your lane, find your niche, find your honesty about what you want to do. And look, we never set out to have a successful podcast. We were talent for another podcast, the three of us, employed, who's paid a fat fee, but our chemistry and our energy worked really well, and we were authentic without being bombastic and offensive. We were considered, we were emotional, we were honest. We were three white pale male stale men that now you wouldn't probably put a podcast together like that, but we are unapologetically ourselves. And do we get it right all the time? No, but have we captured some imagination with what we do? Yeah, 100%. Do we need to evolve? I think we do. But part of the journey has always been about kind of the people, not necessarily the sport. And that's the difference. We're not here to dissect the game. We're here to kind of talk about different things and create some dynamism around a sport we love.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I think your podcast is brilliant.
Cheers, mate.
Your kind of, lastly, before we wrap up, we're close to the hour point. Your fitness transitions, your body transformations. I'm interested in how you find them. I've done 2 or 3 since I've been over 40, and I'm currently on one. I'm about sort of 8 weeks into one right now. How do you find them transitions? I've found them a lot harder as I've got sort of mid-40s. How are you finding the transition?
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, they are challenging. I've always had that mindset when I was playing. So I was lucky enough to do lots of magazine shoots and bits, but I never prepared for them. The couple of ones I've done were all about trying to see how good a shape I get into without having to play sport around it. Because I was a performance athlete first, not a aesthetics model. And the thing with it, aesthetics is a very different thing. It's not that particularly healthy at times. It's hard work, it's discipline, but I quite enjoy that. I enjoy the science of it, the weighing, the measuring, the doing things. I find it harder to change your body. Look, as you get older, but the ways and means of doing it, you just sometimes have to be more focused and calculated, which is even more difficult with my life. So I'm sort of I'm just very lucky that I kind of got good genetics as well, which makes it a difference. But I also have that discipline. But I just, I don't know. I find it hard. There's days why but I'm not a very good cook, so I just was like, right, I'll get a meal delivery service to deliver the fucking food. So I've got no excuses. I know when I go out for meals, if I have fish and vegetables in most restaurants, you can't really fuck that up. If I'm going to go out and have a drink because I want to have balance, I'll have tequila soda. Like, there's loads of ways and means of like managing stuff and doing things. I get my bloods done before a thing, so I'd work out when I was in optimum position to do it, what supplements I needed, and then I'd go from there. I did it. Yeah, I just did it by being disciplined, doing it, and also I just did what they told me to do. That's the bit about it. Like, people start a training plan and get derailed. The guy asked me to do it, I just did it. and sometimes you make an error and go over, but I would just go back on track and be tight the next day, and that's how it was. Now, how long it changes, and whether you get like as lean as you want to be, or whether you get different skin, your body state changes, yeah, that will come into play. But it's definitely possible. I mean, I get all my hormones checked. My testosterone was in the fucking toilet actually, which was really weird. Like I was like 3 basically, which
Wow.
and I think it starts at sort of 11. Yeah. So I went on some TRT to be able to manage that, because that was awful in terms of aging and sleeping. So I just try to always take care of myself, really. But I still have good life balance without being a monk.
Yeah, the TRT is a game changer, isn't it? It is 100% the TRT. I'm a big advocate for it
Yeah.
myself. I talk to a lot of people about getting it, because it sometimes that causes a lot of mental health problems, and it's related to like your mental health crisis, and it's related to the suicide rate as
Yeah.
well, isn't it? Massively.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know enough about that. I don't want to say anything because I don't necessarily know about that. I know that in terms of mood, sleep, sexual performance, aging, all that kind of stuff, I know that. In terms of, I couldn't tell you whether people who've committed suicide have low. I don't know that part. But I certainly know how important it is. You see women with hormonal issues, and then they go into HRT, and it can be transformative. For men, it is exactly the same, but it's getting tested. It's not doing gym science or because your mate tells you to do it, because equally you will fuck yourself up with a capital F if you get it wrong. And all these kids who want to be like these guys in Love Island, they've blown out their testosterone receptors. They can't get erections. Their balls have shrunk. They can't naturally produce testosterone anymore, and they're fucked. So it's a really important thing to go. Don't buy off the internet. Don't fucking ask it. Go and find someone, see someone, do it and understand it, and then whether you need it. Because lots of healthy guys are taking extra testosterone, not realizing that it switches off their natural body's ability to do it.
Yeah.
Their nuts shrink. They fucking feel bad, and like it actually, and then they stop it and they just crash straight off it. And so sometimes you can have low testosterone. You can have high testosterone, but your sex binding hormone is not allowing that free testosterone to go in your body. You don't need the TRT. You need something to address that, but you don't know that without looking into it. So I try to always go with, because let's look at your bloods. What do you need? What's actually where the state of play? What happens? What are the repercussions of doing that? Because sometimes as well, a lot of these peptides and bits, I take them. Some of it's not scientifically, medically not tested. You have to take the risk. Some of them have got some research behind it. A lot of them haven't. Where you're buying them from, where you're getting them, what's the dosage, what you're taking. And some of this stuff, guys smashing in growth hormone, all this kind of stuff, you're increasing your risk of growing fucking tumors, and especially as you get older. So there's there's loads of stuff that it's like women with Ozempic, and just hammering themselves, raising all sorts of health issues, problems, not knowing when to stop. I mean, yeah, it's never been easier to get this stuff, but it's also should be a lot harder to fucking work out whether you need it or not,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. If you're going to do it, you need to do it properly, because you do run the risk of fucking yourself up. It's quite simple, really, isn't it? So what's next for James Haskell? What you got on the cards? Anything you can share with us moving forward?
Yeah, so I've got, I'm just doing the Celebs Go Dating TV series, which is coming out in April, I think, around that time. So I've got the season finale this week. I've got a DJ set in Val Thorens on the 26th of March. I've got new music coming out every month. On a different record label. So if you like dance music, tech house, then check out my name Haskell on Spotify. Other than that, just podcasting, working, soldiering on, and trying to stay out of trouble.
Well, absolutely fantastic, James. It's been absolutely great to talk to you. And an insight and a snapshot into your kind of life and career. Thank you very much for taking the time. An absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for coming on,
Cheers,
buddy.
mate. Thank you.